What's up, everybody? My name's Indy, and the man next to me is Jay Powell from Powell Group Consulting, and welcome to another amazing, exciting episode of Indie Game Business. We want to thank Tripwire Presents for being such an amazing sponsor. Today, we've got Bobby White. He's a game designer from 30 Parallel, or B-Dubs. It's B-Dubs in the house, and developing and launching a game with subsequent updates. And this is a super interesting game, too.
Yeah,
and
so
welcome,
for those
Bobby.
of you in the U.S., he does not have 50-cent wings because we've already tried to clarify that with the B-Dubs. But Bobby, let's start here. Tell us how you got into the industry initially, and then walk us through your career up to this point.
Sweet. Well, buckle in for a nice little origin story, folks. You may have heard this before in other shows that I've appeared on recently, but I'll give you the cliff notes. Essentially, 9 years of hard, sweating, grueling labor in a metalworks factory is actually what prepared me for this line of work. After probably about 5 of those, I was very much struggling mentally and physically. The work environment itself was very toxic, both physically and mentally. And for whatever reason, destiny, or whatever you want to call it, deemed that I needed to be there to find out that that's not what I wanted to be doing with the rest of my life. So for the last 2 years, specifically within that situation, within that dead-end job, no chance of furthering any career or getting a decent raise. It was called semi-skilled labor for a reason. For context, just grinding welds off petrol pumps. But for those final 2 years, I made a decision within myself to go hard or go home. And specifically when I did go home, and the 4 hours of consciousness and capability that I had after those shifts, I spent every waking moment I could finding out how to get into this industry. That involved a lot of podcasts, listening to a lot of podcasts, just like this one. Probably was listening to this one before maybe I don't know if the timing lines up. But anything adjacent to game design, from your GDC talks to your podcasts to your how-tos, but then over and above with Discord, getting involved in the communities, really getting into the nitty-gritty and finding out what it actually entails to be within the industry. I was afforded a fantastic opportunity by my friend and mentor to work at a small startup on a mobile project, a mobile idle clicker that we worked on. That game never seen the light of day. However, thanks to that opportunity, I was able to go in there with aspirations of becoming a narrative designer, and came out of there with enough skills to call myself a game designer. I was allowed to play around with the wireframing. I was allowed to come away with some UI and UX and work closely with the development team on what the game would look like. I was allowed to work endlessly on the content that would be within the game. Using all of those skills that I had learned, basically I kind of took the leap after 9 years of working in that metal warehouse factory and doing this as moonlighting on the side. The game, as I said, never came to fruition, and as a result, the startup had to close. And I kind of just snapped, gave up my day job, laid on the couch for probably about a week, very, very upset, depressed, no light at the end of the tunnel. And thankfully, my mentor, my friends, my family inspired me to go, you know what, this ain't it. This ain't going to be the end. So I went for a month straight, close to about 3 months straight, just flat out every single day. My job was to get a job. And that's exactly what I did. I spent every waking day from 9 to 5 in the morning applying to absolutely everything and anything I could find. And when I had done all that and there was no more jobs to apply to, I would go and follow up to the jobs I'd already applied to. When I'd done that, I went through LinkedIn and I added every single studio up and down the length and breadth of the country. Once I'd done that, I went and got involved in game jams and collaborative efforts, anything that I could. And the final result of that was me being hired as a vendor contractor for a company who has been an absolute godsend to me. I've had the opportunity to work with GameFam, the #1 Roblox experience creator, from which I was able to work on He-Man, which is a 37-year-old, was a huge trip. Fantastic. I then was also able to work with Hot Wheels. Again, plenty of Hot Wheels in the tubs in my mother's loft toys from back in the day. And more recently, I've been working on SpongeBob, which again is just crazy, just unbelievable. I'd say the highlight was when we had an influencer integration on the He-Man project with a little-known streamer. You might have heard of him, some guy called Ninja, Tyler Blevins. He's not really that big, I suppose. But coming full circle, I have been able and been privileged to be a part of the 30 Parallel team, as they have pushed for a kind of soft relaunch of the game with a huge update that we're dubbing 2.0 to the game Terra Alia. So that's where I am now. That's where we are. That's how we got here.
All right, Dan, knock another one off the tick box, because ex-Metal Foundry worker has never been an origin story for us either.
I certainly have a unique bit of backstory there. I'm 37 now, and I've been in the industry now roughly about 4 years. But before then, it was a slog, and it was hard. But I am living proof that if you can even put 1 hour a week aside, you can work towards something and a goal, and giving yourself the experience needed.
Maybe Pebs can do a poll in the Discord. What were you before you became a game designer? If you were something, I was a commercial fisherman.
If you were something, I like
if
that.
You were something, right?
I sold.
You weren't a high school student or anything.
So, didn't technically sold
Not
drugs
muted.
at Walmart. I worked in the pharmacy. So, what's your job in college? Yeah, I sold drugs at Walmart. This is going to be a great episode because there's so much stuff that we can cover. It's like we're going to go through, working with remote teams, and then launching, and then gamifying education, which people have heard me talk. I hate that word, but it is what it is.
Yes.
So let's start there. I mean, the game is, I'm going to say it is BioWare meets Duolingo. Does that work?
That's one way of describing it. I've heard several. I think the latest way that we have kind of tried to term it. Hi there. Apologies, we've got a co-host guest. The latest we've tried to term this is that this is a language learning aid in an RPG. And I know immediately to some people that might be a turn off. They don't want to learn a language. I know when I first came on board, and I was kind of shown, here's one of the games we've been working on. Like, oh, it's magical. Okay. Oh, you learn language. Not interested. I'll be the first to admit, honestly, I had absolutely zero attention span back in French in high school. I was shocked and amazed when I played this game at one, how much French I did retain whilst not trying to. I don't know what that says about me or the teachers. But two, how fun it was to actually brush back up on that. How fun it was to realize how much I had retained. How much it felt like cheating without cheating, if that makes sense. I'm like, oh, I know that. I know I shouldn't know that, but I know that. And I found it very easy then to start retaining a lot of the words and the knowledge within the game. Terra Alia is just a fantastic work of, as you put it, gamifying learning. And it is. It really is. And I think at the end of the day, when we're trying to learn, that's probably the best approach. We want to put something in place that people are going to feel accomplished by when they are attempting to learn. That's the way I see it.
One of my biggest criticisms about educational games, and Lord, I got my fill of them during the pandemic because my son would come home. He was like in 3rd grade at the time. And he's like, yeah, here's the games that we're playing for school. And I'm like, oh my God, these suck. I mean, this is absolutely horrendous. I tell the people that are creating these things, it's like, you're not just competing against the other crappy games that are out there to teach you something. You're competing against Fortnite. If you want these kids to play it because they want to play it, not because the teacher said they had to play it, you've got to make it fun. And that's what you all have done. I mean, whenever you could look at an educational game on Steam and it has mostly positive in the reviews and not, mixed or, mostly negative or something like that, something has gone right here. So how did, from a design perspective, how did you all approach creating the game that was going to leave you with something at the end of the day, but at the same time was engaging enough that you didn't just like play it for the required amount of time and then turn it off and go play whatever?
Yeah, so interest in full transparency, as mentioned before, I had come on board towards the latter end of the development process of Terra Alia in its first state and instance. The impetus, as far as I'm aware, from speaking to the developers, Terra was exactly that, was that we know how to make a core game loop here that's strong, that's fun, that's entertaining, and at the same time, you feel accomplished. However, what's missing from that? And the spitballing that was going on was quite literally like, how do we turn this magic? And it really just kept boiling down to the magical language and the magic of language. And therefore, that became an easy transition of, well, what if we gamified the learning of the actual individual languages? And over the course of time, that developed into 10 different languages. For better or worse, setting ourselves up for a nice little bit of challenge there. But the end result, as you say, for me, comes off as something very, very interesting. And I think a lot of, as you say, the other go-to things that people would bring up, your Duolingos, your Rosetta Stones, although they do in some ways attempt to give you that short-term gratification by learning, that nothing quite beats actually as a gamer being able to just run around in an RPG and distract yourself from the overarching language element of the game.
So did the team, where was the origin story of the team? Did they come from education or did they come from games?
No, they mostly came from games. The bulk of the team are situated in Spain. We work remotely. We have a fantastic array of characters from all over the place within the studio. We've got Joao from Portugal. We've got Julia, our fantastic marketer, who's from Poland, and myself, who's from Middle Earth somewhere. You can guess in the comments if you want. But yeah, I think the language learning aspect of it probably came somewhere from the sort of grant situation where you can get money towards helping create games for educational value. And that's a no-brainer there. If you can get any kind of funding towards the product that you're creating, and it's legit, why not?
Yeah. Especially grant, because free money is always good.
Yes.
The money that you have to pay back is a whole different thing, but the free part of the grant, fantastic. All right, so and you mentioned something there that is a wonderful segue into the next round of questions. We've seen so many companies go remote, during the pandemic. Well, I mean, basically every company had to go remote, at least in our industry during the pandemic. We're starting to see some of them come back. I don't personally understand the reason why everybody needs to be in an office, but I've also run a remote studio for 15 years. What are, some of the ways and some of the tools that you all use to overcome just the logistic liability of you're not all together all the time? And so you've got to communicate both remotely and across time zones.
Yeah.
How do you all approach that?
So for me, I don't know, for certain members of the team, the availability is quite an interesting thing. As long as everyone's open and honest about their availability during the week for a start, for a check-off, then everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet. One of the easiest ways to do that is quite literally to Google Calendars, using your Google account and going at your Google Calendar and blocking out in there quite clearly when you are available. There are also some fantastic tools within Discord. We communicate through Discord primarily as a studio. And there are some fantastic tools and bots that are available that can quite literally just automatically translate time zones for people. as long as they input their time zones to their profile. Outside of that, you're talking, the biggest issue has obviously been space, storage space for the literal fileage and what have you. But that stuff's a dime a dozen these days. It's quite easy to pick up a nice little bit of free storage here or wider use storage there. But honestly, those are the only biggest, I wouldn't even call those drawbacks. They're just natural extensions of working remotely. We don't have an in-house network of computers that we can transfer things to and fro wirelessly, no problem. But outside of that, yeah, it's very smooth and very easy for us to be able to just chop it up at any moment and go jump in a voice chat and let's have a quick call. Just as easy as it would be in a studio situation. We have to go walk to their desk and talk to them, I would imagine.
So, I mean, how big is the studio and how many meetings do you end up having a week? Because that's another thing that we've seen a lot of people complaining about. It's like, okay, no, we're not in the office now, but I'm spending 3/4 of my time in meetings.
Yeah, I think certainly from working with a bunch of different studios and positions remotely, I've seen that the standard is to have at least a daily stand-up, have at least one call a day. If you're in deep in production, whether it's close to launch or the halfway point, you're probably going to want to have to touch base at least once a day. That can sound like overkill. It can be quite a pain in the backside depending on your situation. However, I think it kind of drives people to communicate very well. I think it gives us all the impetus to bring up to each other anything that's outstanding. If you've tried to comment to someone, they maybe haven't replied. If there's a potential blockage coming up, you have the capability to speak about it then and there and remind everyone then and there, this is something that's coming up or this is something that's going on. That I know specifically the 30 Parallel team has been doing that for a long time now, just daily stand-ups, Monday to Fridays, just touching base early in the morning, making sure everyone has their ducks in a row and knows exactly what it is they're going to be doing for the rest of the day. And I found, specifically, as I mentioned, Joao, one of the producers, it works at 30 Parallel, just phenomenal. When you have all your ducks in a row and you have the roadmap laid out, those meetings can take 10 minutes. The size of the studio, you're talking anywhere between 10 and 15 of us, depending on who you include in that mix. But the actual meetings themselves can range from 15 minutes to, hour and a half. But then usually by that point, people start dropping off who actually are really busy and the conversation no longer potentially pertains to what it is they need to be there for.
I think my team would strangle me if we started having daily meetings. It's like we have one meeting on Mondays, and that's good.
It's not for everyone.
Yeah, but I mean, we're not shipping a product either, so it is a little bit different.
I've been in some teams it was 2 meetings a week. I've been in some teams it's 1 meeting a week. I've been in some teams where, as you say, it's 3-4 meetings a day, and you're just tearing your hair out. Going, I can't do the thing if we're always just talking about the thing.
All of these meetings could have been an email. All right.
Yeah.
So as you're getting close, another one of the hurdles that you have, in addition to trying to mix entertainment with something that you're learning from, is, the QA process that a game like this has to go through. So you not only have to go through technical and gameplay checklist, but you've got localization QA to do as well. So talk a little bit about that and the challenges and how you deal with that aspect of it too.
So that's been the biggest hurdle. Obviously, day one, it's a language learning game, so it's going to have to be a lot of time and money and effort spent on LQA, language quality assurance. LQA sends a shiver down many of our spines in the team whenever we mention it, because we know it usually means something's been changed or there's a potential that something's not lining up. And especially, as I say, piling on 10 languages, certainly, we didn't pack light. with Impact Light, we were going shooting for the stars here. The biggest issues have obviously arisen from the more difficult to learn languages. Your Chinese, your Korean, your Japanese. A lot of these deal with the character romanizations. That's something that's been a challenge. But one of the best parts of this process, and one of the coolest things of this process, I mean, you say we've got mostly positive reviews, and I would put that down to the relationship that we have with the community. The community has been integral at catching small things that otherwise we wouldn't have noticed. You can get LQA. You can have someone go through and make sure everything that you want this to say or translate, has been translated accurately. That does not mean what you handed over to get translated in the first instance actually makes sense. So for my part in this 2.0 update was a lot of just going over and over and over the English translation and really diving deep into, does this English make clear and concise sense to anyone playing it? For the most part, it certainly did. But then we found out very quickly, I've got a whole host of, we'll just change this word, or we'll just slightly change this grammar. And then you realize, but then that has to change across 10 different languages. And not only that, to you, it may just be, I'll move this one word or remove this comma. That should be fine just to translate it like that. That's not the case. As anyone who does language translation can tell you, one single word can change the whole meaning of a paragraph, a sentence, even a small quotation. So those have been really interesting challenges. You can perceive that, with a little bit of hindsight, but at the same time, it's a case of trial by error. And I think what's been fantastic about the fact that there's a lot of multilingual members within the studio and around the peripheral of the studio, we've been able to outsource a lot of that to, you speak good German, fluent German. Could you play through the German a couple of times to see if you could find anything? You know how to speak more than 3 languages, right? Well, you're screwed. You're going to be playing the game for about
Welcome to QA.
yeah, quite literally. But I think collectively as a group effort, the idea was to get as much of that done that we could in-house, and then have that kind of quickly checked over by LQA, whereas the more difficult ones that we don't speak certainly needed a lot more attention. And even at that, we've run into situations still where it's like there's maybe not a perfectly accurate translation for this. There's maybe, the Japanese characters don't actually fit within the UI box. There are exceptions that we've had to make to be able to go, okay, can we get this thing out? Can we get this thing playable? And the majority of people can enjoy themselves and learn from it. But it's been a learning experience from ourselves. And I would argue that 30 Parallel is now probably situated itself as one of the experts in the field by having gone through this process now. So we know what not to do as well as what to do.
and that's where you have to start. But if anyone out there is wondering how, something as simple as a comma can, screw something up, just think of the sentence, let's eat, Grandma. And you have a comma in there, and then you take that comma out, and all of a sudden it's let's eat Grandma. It's little differences in there that make all the difference of the world. So, I mean, when you're approaching, so you've got Chinese and Japanese in the game as well, right? So
Korean as well.
All right. So from a technical standpoint, and you touched on it a little bit with the UI, talk a little bit about, how you have to approach and plan for that, because it used to be when we were just doing eFigs, it's like, as long as you left enough space for the German words, you were fine.
Yeah.
But it's not that way anymore.
No. So, I mean, there's certainly a lot of crosswork goes between the UI and the LQA process here. We within the game, if I may, there's a machine called an ATM machine where you're capable of approaching that machine at any point and upping your lingua, or version of mana, by taking on language challenges. You can also review the words that you've also already learned, and you can retake some of the conversations that you've already had with NPCs as dialogue challenges. Now, within that, we've narrowed our screen down so that it looks like a screen that you're staring at. I can't quite do it right, and then within that screen we have the UI, and then within that we have the boundaries of the selected words, as you're saying. So there was definitely a lot of push and pull there. It kind of comes to a point where it's like, we can't do anything else here without affecting the entire game. So in some cases, you may see Japanese characters ever so slightly just spilling out of that initial UI template within the screen. Those are just tough calls you're going to have to make at points, you know, especially, as I say, when you're taking on 10 whole languages, and some of these languages are a little more intense than others. It just comes down to, okay, does it work though? Is it spelled right? You know, obviously in a perfect world, it'd be so much better if we could fit everything in perfectly just how it is. But that's just it's the nature of the game. Nature of the industry. Sorry, you're never going to be have it entirely perfect the way you want it.
So let's segue a little bit into dealing with players. So the game did not launch at mostly positive, correct?
I can't speak to the reviews, but you know, it didn't do gangbuster numbers. We weren't picking up any awards at Game of the Year awards or anything like that. And what's been fantastic about this opportunity now is that, opposed to trying to continuously put out little patches and patch any little holes at the expense of our own sanity, we've been granted an opportunity to actually give this a Hail Mary go. Like, okay, we're happy with what we put out. There are some mistakes, inevitably. But thanks to, again, down to the community and down to the CEO at Terra Alia, we were gifted the opportunity to, let's really go and hammer in. Let's get all of these fixed that we can at the one time, and let's provide some quality of life improvements. Let's provide some FTU improvements for anyone who's not in the biz. That's just jargon for your tutorial, your first-time user experience. How are people entering the game? How are they experiencing the game? So we've had like this really cool journey at the moment for us that's been this potential to not re-release the game. You could call it a soft relaunch in some ways, but certainly curve off some of the edges that we wouldn't have otherwise been allowed to curve off. And I think, again, with the help of the community and with the help of, with the hard work of the studio, we've managed to provide an update that's been very well received by that community. There's players who have been playing this game for donkey's age now and keep coming back to it to check for these updates, keep coming back to check for this type of stuff. One of the biggest things we had was ultra wide screens. That for some reason that's so hot right now on Steam, and it was a continuous request from people. Can you make this fit in ultra wide? Can you make this fit in ultra wide? So yeah, things like that have just been. It's not every day you get the chance to remake or at least polish off some of the stuff that otherwise would have just been launched and left to die.
Yeah, and that's the way, again, showing my age, that's the way it used to always be. It's like once it got shipped in the box, go to Best Buy or GameStop or wherever, it's like that was it. You're done. You're finished. Now it's just, you can plan on doing add-on. But we've seen over the years, obviously there's games that have come out and done well with it. There's games that have come out and done horrible with it. You got things like, I think the big centerpiece is No Man's Sky, which came out to such a absolute thrashing from the community, but now is absolutely fantastic game. When you launch a game that has that mediocre, that tepid response, on top of the fact that you're trying to ship something educational into Steam, which is not exactly the best platform for that, where do you start prioritizing, this new content and these updates in terms of, okay, what's a technical issue? What if we have any Class A bugs in there, Class B bugs? What are the quality of life things? What are just the consumer feedback? How do you start looking at that and triaging and organizing and deciding what to do when?
Well, I think one of the interesting things here about No Man's Sky is something I've spoken about quite a lot recently. The idea that the disc that comes with the game, if you bought the physical copy, had less on it than the day one patch was very interesting. And while I agree with you, certainly we're living in this very tumultuous age of paying 70 quid for a game and it might not even be a working game at launch is a horrifying prospect. However, the opportunity we have, at least via Steam, is to be able to provide a level of service and care to a product that we're putting out. In which case, as you say, that potentially before it would have come out, any mistakes that were in that language learning game would be there. But going back to the second half of your question, more so it's about the language at the end of the day. And for us, that was a frustrating, but at the same time, important aspect that we made sure that we got as much of that right as possible, and that anyone who is attempting to brush up on any one of these languages has the capability to do so. So for me, those were always prioritized. The second thing for me, but first and foremost as a game designer for me, was it's the Futuri. It's how are people coming into this game? We had the demo up. We don't have a demo for 2.0 at the moment. That's going to be coming up shortly. But to pull down the old demo because we now have the updated version of the game. But that in and of itself for me was like, well, if people of all experience levels can come into this game, and I'm talking experience level as a gamer, experience level as a language learner, can come into this game and intuitively be able to play it start to finish, then that's a huge thing. Now, again, the product that was launched, fantastic. It already had a lot of the stuff in there that was necessary for that. My job was simply just to kind of boost that stuff ever so slightly and make sure that we had as many hints as possible, which, I certainly had a bit backwards and forwards with our main producer, Carlos, who's a little more of a sadist, I would think, kind of gamer. He likes to figure it out himself. He's like, hey, but Bobby, we want gamers not to be stupid. We want them to be very good. And I'm like, yeah, that's understandable. But the good gamers will figure that out without the hints, And that's not to say you're a bad gamer if you didn't figure it out. I spent a good few hours playing this game, running around in circles because I was doing the Beverly thing of skipping the hints and going, I don't need the hints. I don't need the hints. I know how to play computer games. It's fine. What am I doing here? I'm lost. I think that was an excellent case study of, okay, we want to cater to language learners. We also want to cater to the average gamer, to the average person who might possibly pick this up or have this given to them and go, oh, well, what's this? Can I play it start to finish? So for me, the language aspect, first and foremost, obviously being a language learning game, but also that the core game loops side of that had enough support from the rest of the design of the game, so that players could seamlessly skip between learning and combat and just playing around in a mystical world.
All right. And so if you're out there watching and listening and you've got questions or anything that goes along with localization and language learning and education and or post-launch content and dealing with your consumers that you have to keep engaged, drop it in chat. We'll get the answers going. So once you've got prioritized the things that shipped with the game that need to be adjusted, corrected, fixed, whatever, where do you start with, okay, so what type of new stuff are we going to add? How are we going to keep gamers engaged in this for a long term, not just like for the first 30 days?
That's a fantastic question. Because when the initial game dropped, solo RPG, you can explore the first level, complete all the side quests or some of the side quests or none of the side quests, travel to the second level where there's a hell of a lot more to do. It's a bigger, wider, sprawling city, a lot more action. Again, plenty of side quests. And then the third level, sprawling sandy desert with deep dark dungeons and some fantastic puzzles there. You would then essentially go on to complete the game. I won't give any spoilers on that. However, what we were able to do was go back in and say, well, hold on a minute, I might want to keep playing. I might want to go back and do those side quests. So we have a teleportation system between these levels, and we were able to trigger it so that, well, no, now you can get right up to end of game content and even complete end game content, and then still have the ability to traverse backwards and forwards across the whole world. That's a huge thing. It's a small thing, design-wise and development-wise, I would argue, for the payoff. The payoff's immense. It means that if you should wish to go on and 100% your build, you don't have to do it in this meticulous, difficult way to begin with, making sure you click absolutely everything, looking at read-ups and what have you. Excuse me. Some of the other stuff for me was integral, is to really highlight the combat. We have an awesome combat system here. I'm not the biggest proponent of turn-based combat. I just always kind of find it a bit stiff and boring, personally. I know there's plenty of examples of it not being like that, so don't come at me.
I mean, you're wrong, Bobby, but that's beside the point.
It's a taste thing, okay? It's a taste thing. But in this situation, we were, given a really cool system that's not based on tit for tat, you hit me, I hit you. There is a timing meter, and there's a spell cast meter, which quite literally means you have to reach the spell casting meter before you can actually cast the spell. Now, that affords us opportunity doing some real cool stuff with the actual skill trees and developments, allowing the players to boost their focus and the speed of which they can actually cast spells, allowing for a more customizable build set. But then over and above that, it gives us cool mechanics where you're able to interrupt people's spells because you can see them coming. Beforehand, there were small meters in the GUIs of the avatar images of you and your combatant. Unless you'd played the game for a good while, you probably didn't know what those meters meant. This allowed us the opportunity to go back to an original design that was actually poo-pooed by our CEO because he didn't like it, was that gauge meter presented at the front. Now, one of the cooler things even then afforded is that we're sitting here going, yeah, but a lot of old school players or people who played it before might not like that. And that's quite a big change to implement, to put this big splash GUI bar across the combat. So we set it up so that that's optional. You can have up to 3 separate ways of being able to view the combat, with your original, with the new, or with a combination, or back to the original, none at all kind of thing. And that's, again, not many teams get the chance to, okay, you done the thing, you're happy with how you done the thing to an extent. If we let you do it again, how would you do it? And that's been just such a cool experience to be part of, was to be able to develop those things and go back to those old arguments and things that were thrown out. Why were they thrown out? Was it a money thing? Was it a time thing? Do we really think this is actually going to be beneficial in the long run? And for me, it was a huge, huge thing. I enjoyed the turn-based combat in the game, but I didn't always time it right. I could easily get distracted or become quite confused as to why I was losing. With the invention, with the integration of these bars, again, average gamer here, I'll put my hand up and say it. I was console for majority of my days. To have that extra little acknowledgement of what's going on and me being able to focus and read into what's about to happen, it means when I get frustrated and go to flip the table, that I know it's a skill issue. It's not it's not the game. It's not anything I've designed wrong. It's me. I'm the problem. It's me, to quote Taylor Swift.
Again, it's always the game. It's never us. It's always the game. I always know I'm playing a proper Mario game when I hit the point where I want to throw my controller at the wall, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it now. This is normal. So, one of the things that I'm thinking of when you go back and you say you get to end game and then you're going to teleport back to an earlier level, did y'all have to go back and scale those levels now because you can basically trounce it as a max level character, or how did that work?
Well, there was certainly some rebalancing done. And I think for the most part, what we've allowed the player to do is to reach that pinnacle OP point and then, be able to go back and whoop some ass. It certainly will feel a little odd to you to go back to high school after the 3 levels you've been through and then just start kicking the ass of your own
Yeah, no, that is absolutely fun. That is,
but with the differences, the capability within the game is that you can switch your loadout of spells any given time. So you may be able to build up quite a good core skill set to essentially have a big boost over the other characters, the NPCs that you will be combating with. However, you still then have the capability to go, well, I'm going to start from a fresh deck. I'm going to have these spells that I haven't spec'd up, these spells that I haven't upgraded, that I don't know exactly what they're going to do, perhaps, or how well it's going to benefit my loadout. So there's a lot of room there for experimentation. And then once you've done that, there's nothing to stop you going back and starting a new build, going through the whole process again, knowing now what you know, having learned the language. A lot of the language that you have now learned gives you a huge leg up. Like I say, like my first playthrough was fun. The second or third playthrough, I was really getting into it because I'm like, I know all these words now. I can skill up pretty fast here. I can get to OP a hell of a lot faster than before, and it very much becomes I'll give this another go from scratch kind of game, as well as giving you the opportunity to go in 100%. Pick up all the side quests and collectibles and what have you.
Yes, you learn after a while that when you cast that spell on you, that was not a healing spell, that was a fireball. You don't know that until you learn what Infuego means. So we've got a good question from Twitch. What stopped you guys from making it a hardcore horror game? I think this would be the urgency of needing to know what people are saying in the game if there was a horrific monster that would rip you apart if you didn't learn the language.
Shout out to Spurdunky and friends. Appeared on his the podcast a few weeks back now. It's an absolute pleasure. Real cool guys. What stopped us from making a hardcore horror game? Well, I think it was maybe aimed a little more family friendly, slightly kids orientated, based on the aesthetic, the whimsical, magical future technology world. Thinking Harry Potter meets Cyberpunk, but a little more grounded, a little more Chris Nolanified, if you will. I think I'm actually quite intrigued to know if there had been plans for it to turn it into a horror, or if there are ways to turn it into a horror. I think there are, specifically with some of the characters and some of the later characters that we have in the game. I genuinely kind of got a jolt anytime it would jump into combat with certain characters, and I'm like, oh hell no. Oh no, he's way too OP. That's terrifying. But I think that's just the gamer and me knowing I'm about to get my ass handed to me. It's more part of the fear. But
and that's why I still haven't bought Elden Ring. It's like I don't want to get my ass handed to me day in and day out in a game. That's not what I'm playing for.
Well, like you say, we done that back in the day with the platformers to an extent. I often say people, who plays platforming game? I'm like, my days are long behind me. I tortured myself with Donkey Kong Country to the max on the SNES, and that's all I need. Thank you very much. Super Meat Boy, no thank you. You're okay.
I love seeing their stories on Reddit where someone, my age hands their kid and says, okay, get to level 3 of the Lion King from SNES, and then you can get a dog or a pony or because there's no way in hell they're ever going to do it.
Yeah. That's it.
So where does this go from here? I mean, we've seen this latest wave of games in the last couple of years have started, saying post-launch content equals new game plus. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. Yeah. But where do you plan on taking the game next over the next couple of months or a year, or however far out you want to plan?
Yeah. So at the moment, the main impetus has been behind this 2.0 update. big push, the big Hail Mary swing. There's been a lot of learning curve. It's interesting you mentioned earlier about Steam pages and marketing and releasing to not rave reviews, shall we call it. A lot of the learning that we've done from that, I believe, has set us up fantastically. Our awesome marketer, Julia, came on board and almost immediately pulled us up and was like, guys, what's going on with the labels on your Steam account? You haven't labeled this like the competitors or similar games of ours. And it really, it was a break-stopping moment of like, we surely thought we tagged this the way that was appropriate. But that little bit of insight of someone going, yeah, but look at what the other games in your field or area are doing. And this is maybe why they're making such such waves comparatively. And those things are scary to find out, but they're good to know before you go for your second swing, before you go for your big update. And at the same time, we have plans for the world of Terra Alia. I can't go into too much detail. What I can say is if you like switching between consoles, then keep your ears peeled for that, because there may or may not be an announcement coming soon. And there are other plans in the long run to take this workflow pipeline that we've created of understanding language, of understanding how to use that within a game loop, and the work that's been spent on that LQA keyword spent gives us an opportunity there to, as I say, almost become like the experts in the field at this. Should that be the way that the studio wishes to take it? I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity there for us to be able to learn from this experience, but also be able to benefit from it, no matter the outcomes. For me, it's more so now about getting as many eyes on the product as possible, as appearing on podcasts and trying to find these newer ways of marketing. Again, coming back to Julia, she's been fantastic with her TikTok and her Twitters and her Instagrams, and these are the type of things that, while we're being uploaded to at the time, we did not have a dedicated person that was tracking those socials. And she's been fantastic and incredible at literally coming to us with weekly reports of, here's how many eyes you're getting on every post. Here's how many things you're missing. Here's where we didn't post this week, and you can see a direct dip. Here's what is doing good, and here's what isn't doing good. For one of the longest times, weirdly enough, some of the oldest, earliest TikTok videos we put from like a year and a half ago were still outperforming new content that was going out. But that was a great case study for us to be able to then find out what was going to do good. And some of the more recent posts have actually been showing a hell of a lot more engagement in comparison. And it's given us a huge leg up on, again, understanding how these things are going to go. I know Julia's got like a bright future ahead of her within marketing, within the studio as well, to be able to take those skills and to take that workflow pipeline that she's designing and apply that to any title that should come down the road in the future.
All right, so that brings up a whole another section of shit that we haven't talked about yet. You all self-published this game. So you not only had to figure out the development side, the testing, all the localization requirements, all of this stuff, you also had to figure out how to sell it.
Yes.
So what were some of the biggest challenges that came from that aspect of the project compared to the actual development?
I believe it was the marketing. I believe, again, as we say, we brought Julia on board, and she was very thorough, very, very thorough. As thorough as any developer would be in their craft of knowing what they need to know to be able to excel the production of the game. She was phenomenal at coming in and just straight away with analytics, hammering us with analytics, going, look. These analytics mean something, and we need to build something based off of these analytics, whether that's the marketing campaign, whether that's singular ads, whether that's just how we interact with the community. We thankfully already had a good Discord community there that was being listened to and reacted with. However, having a marketer who works within social media as well to be able to come in and regularly update, a part of our job is almost become the reporter of any bugs or concerns between the Steam pages, between the Discord community of, hey, is this a thing? Is this a skill issue, or is this a one-off kind of problem with their hardware? And she's been integral in communicating with that community. I think a lot of the bonuses within that have been this two-way relationship. When your fans, early adopters, the buyers of your product speak, it is very integral that you listen. Not only listen, but actually analyze what's being said. It would be very easy to take what's being said to you, on the chin and maybe, roll your eyes like, yeah, sure thing, buddy. You don't know what it's like to make games, though. But it's a lot harder to go, okay, so what do you mean by that? Could you get back to me with your system set up? What is it that you're using? Is this is this a hardware issue? How can we identify and recreate this bug? Let's try and recreate this bug. Right. We have a solution, or we have a patch, or we know why it's happening. It's on their end. Let's communicate that as soon as possible. Let's get back to them. I'm a huge fan of a bit of a social media marketing influencer called Gary Vee. He's not everyone's cup of tea. He's a bit of a Marmite kind of guy, we call it in the UK. You either love him or hate him. But one of the things he said was that if someone is taking the time of day to comment on your ship, it is absolutely astounding that you would have any kind of gall to not respond to that person or to not take that comment seriously. It just means you're full of yourself, is what it actually means. And thankfully with Terra Parallel, they've cultivated a community there where it's a two-way conversation, where we're now very beholden to them for those positive reviews in more ways than one. And we probably wouldn't have had those positive reviews had we not actually reacted the way that we believe most companies should. You can say the customer's always right. It's maybe not the especially in the age of Karen 2.0 or whatever you call it. Maybe not the perfect statement to make, but certainly if the customer's going to give you the time of day, then you should probably afford them in kind, I would say.
So when it comes to, again, good point here with the analyzing social media and using analytics, which I don't think enough developers do, but at the same time, I think it's because it's not something inherently easy to do.
Yes.
What tools are you all using to keep track of, where social media is finding bugs and issues that come up with the game? Is it something in particular, or is it literally like cutting and pasting out of Twitter into a spreadsheet?
Yep, a bit of both. So for anyone who's released games on Steam, we know you have your community hub, but over and above that, you do have your comments and reviews. I would argue anything that's posted in anywhere there, this is your store's front page. This is literally what people are seeing. So it's on you to take the time to really engage there and try and turn that mixed review into a positive, or try and turn that one review into okay, it may have been a bad experience for you, but we've done a lot of work now to try and turn that around. What I know Julia does is goes in very deep to any and all of the software and social medias that we use. So for instance, with your Steam, she has Steam analytics up to a point. She knows very well how to read those analytics, and also which part of those analytics are just fooey. It's just unreadable or very non-specific. Therefore, you can't really glean too much into it. She will then go essentially and quite literally copy and paste those analytics, whether it's the Twitter posts, whether it's the Instagrams and the TikToks, something as simple as just quite literally charting the views. It's not perfect, but it's a lot more than forethought than I've seen going into these type of things before on a smaller level with teams that don't have dedicated marketers. There's this kind of, to me, it's always been this kind of idea like build it and they will come, post it and they will they will buy. And as we know, it's just not the case. You really have to be engaged with how well your products are being perceived, how well the marketing you're doing is actually being perceived. And again, one of the things that Julia's managed to fantastically isolate is the difference between just posting for posting's sake and actually posting for, for value, posting for people who are interested in the process, posting the here's how it was, here's how it's going, sticking with those kind of memes and themes at the time that are, invaluable in many ways to getting eyes on that social media post and that marketing. Because as we know, it's such a huge part of selling any game is getting as many eyes as you can on the product. You're always going to get a click through. You're probably not even going to get 5% of a click through based on the amount you put out there. But that's all the more reason to not only put as much out there as you can, but make it as focused as you can, at least to a certain extent. Come back to Gary Vee, very much document, don't create. You could spend hours making this very polished post, this beautiful post and video. In that time, you probably could have put out 3 or 4 where you were talking directly to your fan base, where you're talking directly to your community, where you're talking directly to the industry that you're involved in, and arguably getting exponentially more engagement with that type of content than your one-off polished fancy video that everyone's just going to look at and go, is it an advert? Oh, okay.
Well, I have to give a huge shout out to Mariah and Ash on our team, because last night I was sitting on the couch watching the hockey game and I got an email that's like, your latest TikTok video has 3,000 views. And I was like, what the fuck? What? But it is. You have to put it out there. They do a wonderful job. And yes, folks, we have a TikTok. Don't ask me how to work it or anything. I don't know. But yes, it's there. But Bobby, I mean, you all have done an amazing project here, and I want to make sure that you realize, and everyone listening realize, how big a deal it is that you not only build a game, but you incorporated education into it in a meaningful way. You then turned around and self-published it, and you have kept it live and revamped it and updated it and listened to your players and the community in general. And that is not a small thing. That is a absolute huge ordeal. So, I mean, major props to you and the entire team over at 30 Parallel.
On behalf of the team, thank you very much. I know they worked a lot harder than myself in the initial phases of getting this stuff up and done. I just came in and took all the glory at the end and jumped onto the podcast.
Yes, that's what we're here for.
To be perfectly clear, this is entirely extracurricular on my half. I'm just trying to help promote the game as much as I can. But I know the team would be thrilled to hear that, because anyone who plays the game has come back to us with a real good attitude towards the game. Even when it is just this word's wrong, this translation's wrong, it doesn't come from a place of negativity. It comes from a place of someone who's played the game thoroughly and went, that's wrong. It'd be good if they know that. And I wonder if they'd change it, and we do. So
there you go. We posted the link earlier, but I will do it again right here. You sold me a copy of it in the middle of this talk, so you're good there. You have at least accounted for like $10 in revenue, so that's a wonderful thing. There's the game. We are out of time anyway.
Finally, it's over, so I can go play this game.
Well, if I may, before we wrap up, guys, I just want to thank you guys very, very much, not only just for allowing me to appear, but for the work that you guys do with this community, with this podcast. It's been a huge benefit and value to myself. I have spent copious hours jumping into the voice chats in the Discord, listening, or going back and catching on the YouTube, and including the events and workshops that you put on that have just been absolutely phenomenal. Sorry, Peps, on the go.
No, I mean, thank you so much. That's why we do this. And so the workshop that he's Pebs, you're in the industry now. Technically, you get paid to play all the games as far as the IRS.
Yeah, that's it.
Right? So I mean, don't
it's
stress
all
too much.
A write-off. Everything you ever buy that has anything to do with sitting on your butt in front of a computer or or gaming system is a write-off.
Or Steam Deck or consoles or anyway. So the workshop that Bobby may have been talking about, I don't know if is or not, we are back in the realm of doing pitch deck reviews live on the Discord server. And if you want to have yours reviewed, hit us up. Ash has got the information on there, but these things are full. It's like I looked over there yesterday and there were 25 people in the video chat. And so it's a wonderful thing. It is completely 100% free. Use it, get real world feedback on your pitch from scouts and people, that work at the Epic Store and Steam and all of these wonderful places. But yeah, with that, Dan.
Yeah. If you guys have any questions about anything, don't ask Jay or Heather or me. Ask Pebs in the Discord.
She is full-time now. So
yes. Yay. Congrats.
Awesome.
And welcome to full-time. That's amazing. She's doing such amazing. But yes, thank you so much. Whoop, whoop. Tripwire Presents sponsored this podcast right here. So thank you so much. Tripwire Presents is amazing, and we really appreciate your sponsorship. Thank you so much, Bobby White, for coming. B-Dubs for coming on. B-Dubs in the house. He's also in the Discord. Join the Discord if you're not in it. Discord.gg/Indie Game Business. And the next Indie Game Business Conference.
Different podcast.
The Indie Game Business
Can I get a slot on that one?
is happening in a few months. It's happening. I'm gonna have to Google that now. Don't look that up. Don't. Better steal that.
Oh,
really quick.
Oh God.
It must be that time on a Friday, gents, because we're all hitting the giggles big time.
Okay.
Oh, no.
We will be back next week. Dan won't be here. It'll be me on my own. So may God have mercy on all of us as I run this show by myself. But thanks, everybody. And have a wonderful weekend. And we will see you next week.
Yes.